Here with Chris Canty, and we are going viral with the NFL Scouting Combine. Less than a week away, the league tweeted out this throwback video of Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes saw it and posted, quote, "I'm still sad I didn't run a 4.79. Could have said I was a 4.7 guy." Canty, how crazy is it that in 2017 Mahomes was doing this, and after the 2019 season, already a regular season and Super Bowl MVP?
Sarah, it's probably the best two-year start to any career in the National Football League. MVP in his first full season as a starter, and then holding up the Lombardi Trophy in year two. It's unbelievable what Pat Mahomes can do.
No question.
He's the best player in football.
Yes, I totally agree. Because, you know, what he does is sustainable. Like with Lamar Jackson, we're wondering how long can he keep this up. What he's doing, he can keep up for the next 12 years.
Yeah, and
if not more.
And I'm sure Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy don't want Pat Mahomes running 40 yards as fast as he can at any point. Although he did have that nice run in the playoffs.
It was in slow motion, but it was nice.
It was nice. That spin move took forever. Yeah. Hands on the clock turned faster.
What was his vertical? Didn't look that high.
He got that Woody Harrelson white men can't jump vertical.
Something.
Out of the Eagles. When Philly drafted Carson Wentz second overall back in 2016, expectations were high, and when the Eagles gave Wentz a four-year, $128 million deal, the bar was raised even higher. But with injuries leading to just one playoff start in 4 seasons, every move the quarterback makes is put under a magnifying glass. Wentz's teammate, Lane Johnson, went on the herd yesterday to defend his quarterback.
Nobody faced more scrutiny, I think, over the past couple years than Carson. I think it was a weird predicament he was in with Nick Foles. I mean, how many times has anything like this happened before?
He's got Nick Foles as a statue at the stadium.
You have a statue at the stadium, man. Hey, and you have to go to work every day. I think he did a good job of ignoring the noise. I think he really worked his tail off this year. You know, they had the whole injury-prone label, this and that. I think he did a good job of working through it. I think he ignored the distractions. And I think he answered a lot of questions this year.
Canty, for you, what's your level of confidence in Wentz moving forward?
I'm confident in his ability. The only question I have is he going to be able to stay healthy? Now, I got to give him credit for last year playing all 16. He fought through some nicks and bruises, which is something that gets him some cred in the locker room. But as far as Carson Wentz's overall ability, I don't think that's ever been in question. I mean, it wasn't a question about whether or not he was a better quarterback in terms of doing all the things that are fundamental to the position. It wasn't a question of whether he was better than Nick Foles or not. He's clearly better than Nick Foles, and I think now we're seeing that Nick Foles actually went down to Jacksonville, and you saw he got supplanted by a rookie in Gardner Minshew. So I just look at Carson Wentz, and the only question I have is he going to be able to stay healthy? Because in his first 4 years, he was only healthy for the full season in 2 of them. And that's going to continue to be a question. Now, what he did in the last month of the season, after his team came off of a disappointing loss to the Miami Dolphins, they were 5-7. He dragged his team kicking and screaming down the stretch, throwing to guys like Boston Scott and Rob Davis and Deontay Burnett, Greg Ward. I mean, he's just throwing to a who's who cast of characters, but that just shows you how good this dude is. This is why Howie Roseman moved up to number 2 to take him a few years ago, because he has the ability to be a force multiplier. He can make everybody else around him better. And so from that perspective, I don't think anybody has been critical of Carson Wentz. Now, do you get a different degree of scrutiny when you become a top 5 quarterback in terms of pay scale? Absolutely. And especially when you inherit a roster that came off of a Super Bowl a couple of years ago with the backup quarterback. So I look at those different reasons and say, yeah, people put Carson Wentz under a microscope, but I don't think he's the most scrutinized quarterback in the National Football League. He's not even the most scrutinized quarterback in his draft class when you look at Dak Prescott and Jared Goff. So I think that we got to pump the brakes in terms of people being critical of Carson Wentz. Are there questions? Absolutely. But it's not about his overall ability.
No, I'm with you. And, yeah, he's far from the most scrutinized quarterback. Baker Mayfield, who we just talked about, is far more scrutinized. And I think with Carson, what people are just doing is stating the facts. The facts are he was off to a great start that second year, probably was going to, almost certainly was going to be the MVP. But then they go to the Super Bowl and win it with his backup. Okay, fine. Comes back the next year, though, they start 5 and 6. And then he gets hurt, Foles gets in, and they look great again, you know, going 4-1 down the stretch and do well in the playoffs. So those are the questions. Those are just facts people stated, and then you wonder why. Why was this team not that good with Carson, and then they take off under Nick Foles? And the teammates are building shrines to Nick Foles. So those are just facts. Lane Johnson can act like that he had nothing to do with that, but he's a part of the team too. He could have been like, we cannot do this. This is our quarterback. We can't build this. So I think a question that I have based on that, you mentioned the health, certainly that's a question. Another question, though, is the leadership. And that's something that's been a topic of discussion the last few years with him, too, related to the Nick Foles situation. That's why players gravitated more to Foles, because they had issues with Carson. The players that seemed to have issues with him were the veterans. And that's why, even though he had that great run at the end of the year, going 4-1 down the stretch and making the playoffs, he did it with the no-name guys. Boston Scott, Miles Sanders. You mentioned the receivers, Greg Ward, who was a quarterback. Guys who, no matter who was quarterbacking, they're just trying to show you they can play in the NFL for a long time. So they're trying to impress scouts and everybody who's watching, so they're doing whatever he says. When they get Alshon Jeffrey back, we'll see if Aguilar, he may be gone. You know, when they get Deshaun Jackson back and all these guys, will they buy in to Carson Wentz and what he's selling? That's kind of my question. And if they don't, I can't have Carson just be a guy that can only lead the no-names. You know, he's got to be able to lead the veterans who've proven something, too.
Well, I hear you on that, and confidence comes from demonstrated performance. Those veteran players had confidence in Nick Foles because he was the guy that delivered them a championship. He had that playoff run for the ages. Carson Wentz has not done that yet. So Carson Wentz has yet to win an actual playoff game, even though he got his team to the playoffs.
Will they be impressed with the late run? You think that changes anything with the vets?
Well, I think that does change a little bit. I mean, in the month of December, he was 10 touchdowns to 1 interception. So even though he was playing some really bad teams, he still had to go out there and win those games, and he delivered, especially when the team was shorthanded. So that does give him a little bit of respect amongst his teammates. But when you talk about Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson buying into Carson Wentz, they ain't got no choice. Because if they don't, those guys are going to be moving on. Howie Roseman committed to Carson Wentz and paid him on a contract extension $34 million a year. If the organization has to make a decision between Wentz and Jackson or Wentz and Jeffrey, the decision is already made. So they got no choice but to fall in line. But the fact that he did have that run at the end of last year, I think that bodes well in terms of him being in a leadership position and the players in the locker room accepting that going into 2020.
Is it the leadership style? Is it just having the confidence because you've won with someone? I mean, where is it something that Wentz can grow into? Why would you say that it's unique and something that they need to buy into?
Well, I think it's a little bit of relatability. Like, I mean, think about where Carson Wentz comes from, North Dakota State, all of those different things relating to other guys in the locker room. I think that's the thing that we're trying to figure out. Can he find a way to meet players on their level in order to get the most out of them? But based on what he did with the young guys, I just feel like this is something that the rest of the team is going to have to buy into, because the head coach is sold on him, the organization is sold on him, the owner is certainly sold on him, or he wouldn't have signed off on giving him the contract extension. So I think that